WATD presents John Paul, the Car Doctor. All things automotive. Have questions? Call 781-837-4900. Now, here's John Paul, the Car Doctor.
And good Sunday morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Car Doctor program on 95.9 WATD. My name's John Paul, the Car Doctor, here to help you with your car problems. So let me get this right. It's 60 and drizzly today. Yesterday was 50 and torrential rain, and Friday was like 90 degrees in southern New England. Yep.
Friday was summer, and then yesterday I stepped out of the house to go to work in shorts and a T-shirt and immediately regretted my decision. But I'm a man, so I went anyways in my shorts and T-shirt.
It makes perfect sense. You know, my wife will say things to me like, I'm freezing out, and I'm like, you just got to put up with it. You know, that's all there is to it. Mm-hmm. But yes, we'll talk about my long drive coming up shortly. But with us on the phone is Jason Larson. He's a sales manager for Tuffy Security Products. And, you know, so many people today, their vehicle is their office. You know, they have everything from tools to computers to laptops to tablets, which I guess a laptop is a computer, tablets to firearms to, you know, all kinds of stuff that they keep in their car for a variety of reasons. And you want to make, you want to make sure those things are secure. And Tuffy Security Products has a kind of a full complement of all of those things, some specifically made for certain vehicles. Jason, good morning and welcome to the Car Doctor program.
Hey, thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and you know, let's talk a little bit about your company first. You know, it may not be a company that people have heard of before.
Right, because, I mean, it's one of those. I mean, at the end of the day, the product line is just a very discreet product. Obviously, we're just not trying to bring a whole heck of a lot of attention to it, because the last thing you want to do is when you have a lockbox in your vehicle is tell people that it's there. So it doesn't necessarily help us in the marketing aspect, but we've definitely been around. We've been around since 1989, and definitely the leader when it comes to locking automotive storage. And the ultimate goal is to make sure that when you walk away from the vehicle, nothing else walks away from the vehicle.
That makes absolute sense. And you know, one of the products that you have and one of the vehicles that you market to is Jeep. And let's face it, you know, there's, you know, a Jeep Wrangler, you know, some form of a CJ. You don't have much less security in a vehicle like that than a Jeep. Open top, not a whole lot of storage that you can lock up, but you guys have answers for all of that.
Exactly, and yeah, especially with like a Jeep platform or anything like that. I mean, doors come off, top comes off, everything of that nature to be able to enjoy the vehicle. And they don't really give a lot of storage to begin with. Now, the one fortunate thing about Jeep is they give us a lot of mounting locations, whether they designed it that way or not. And we create a lot of options, whether that's cargo storage that's going to go behind the rear seats and use up all that space that is available. Consoles, those are some of our most popular products, whether that's a console safe that goes inside of the factory console, or even a console replacement where we actually take out the existing console, or in some circumstances when a vehicle doesn't actually have a console in there, we have consoles that can install into those spaces between the seats and really make the most of the space you currently have in the vehicle and have products that integrate very nicely to what you currently have.
And you mentioned that you have some lock boxes that can fit in existing consoles, and some of those are for things like, you know, Chevy pickups and Ford pickups and things like that. But also, you know, with a little bit of I guess a little bit of effort and a little bit of creativity. Maybe you have a car that has a pretty good size center console. You could probably find one of your lock boxes that could probably fit in there and be able to be secured. Maybe not that perfect, almost factory look you have with a Silverado, but still someplace where you could lock your stuff up and keep it private.
Exactly. We definitely strive to make as many vehicle-specific options as possible, and you're absolutely correct. With a lot of the late-model trucks and SUVs, they give us the space available in order to install those vehicle-specific options that integrate very nicely. but not all vehicles on the road give us that nice incorporated space that we need in order to give you a product. There's a lot of times when we want to install a product into a specific space, and once we finally make something that can fit for it, there's no storage space available, and that's one of the things that we definitely have to pay attention to, because we want to make sure that when you do have a product, it's going to be usable. So for some vehicles, that actually means a universal product. So rather than having something that goes inside of the console or an underseat drawer that's specific underneath your driver's seat or glove box, a lot of our universal products, as you mentioned, just based on width, length, and height, are going to be able to incorporate into those spaces and giving you a nice fit and function of a product that's going to give you that secure storage that you need. And ultimately, and this is kind of the same conversation we have with a lot of customers, is the only thing that restricts you is your own imagination. If you've got an imagination, we're going to have something available for you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And the idea of, you're going to be able to come up with something. Somebody wrote to me about a month ago, and they just bought, I think it was a new I think it was a Kia Telluride, and they were surprised that the glove compartment didn't lock. I was like, there's no lock on the glove compartment door, which, if anybody knows anything about glove compartments, the locks are not particularly robust to start off with. But they said, and they looked into it, and they looked at a different model, and the glove compartment door with the lock on it was going to be about $400 of maybe it would work, maybe it wouldn't. Plus, you'd have to have the key made for it, and you might even have to have that door color matched to the dash because they all came in black, and it turned out that it was going to be a lot of work and a lot of expense just to have a glove compartment locked. And my suggestion was, go to a company like yours, find a lockbox, and even if it's something like, I just want to secure my wallet while I go to a sporting event, or I go to the gym and I want to put my wallet, my key, my wallet, my phone tucked away somewhere. You have some options, and you can even take something like, one of your options is a portable gun safe with a cable lock, and you could put that under the seat, cable lock it to the seat frame, and all of a sudden now you have a secure place that you can lock your stuff away, and nobody's going to be able to get to it very easily.
Exactly, and you took the words right out of my mouth with that, because for $90 on those portable safes, that's basically the start when it comes to those universal options. That no matter what vehicle you're driving, that's always the first great start, because it is going to be able to secure phone, wallet, keys, anything that you need to make sure it's not going to walk away when you walk away. But you also bring up a really good point as to the locking glove box, and that you're going to spend that $400 to try and upgrade that feature. But at the end of the day, there's still one blatant issue when it comes to those factory options, and those locks are plastic. And as much as we want to be able to trust them, unfortunately we can't, and that's why even like our line of console safes exists, because a lot of consoles do come with a factory lock on there, but unfortunately they're not actually designed to take a beating. It really only takes a flathead screwdriver to break any of those locks that you're getting factory on the vehicle, and that's why we actually manufacture all of our products out of steel, to make sure it can take that beating.
Yeah, and one of the ones that you see a lot of people with, maybe job boxes mounted in the back of their vehicles, and those kind of take up a lot of room. But you have one of the ones that I'm sort of intrigued is you have this kind of mid-size SUV cargo box that looks like it could fit in a small pickup or an SUV. Tuck it back there, mount it, and it looks, I don't know, it looks like it would take a torch to cut through it to open it.
You know what? We definitely try to make it as difficult as we possibly can for anybody attempting to get in there that shouldn't be in there. So yeah, we definitely make it difficult. But those drawers, they're amazing, because they're going to give you a lot of storage space. So I will have truck bed drawers that go all the way up to 8-foot beds, so giving you maximum storage space. But then even for SUVs, we have our cargo drawers. Our most popular is our Atlas Vault install. And it's just a really nice plug-and-play drawer that you can get bolted into the vehicle, and it gives you that storage space that you want, that security that you need. And then some of the accessories that we include with it really help with the functionality, because with like the Atlas vault, we give you a top rail. And what I mean by top rail is, rather than just being the drawer and having the top with nothing to prevent anything from falling, we install a rail on top that's also got molly cutout in it. So not only does it prevent items from sliding off the top of the drawer, but then you can also tie items down to the top of it as well using that rail.
Yeah, it looks, the stuff looks really interesting. And, let's talk about, how it's made. It looks real solid. These are, I think, all steel boxes that look like they're, really heavy gauge metal. It's not like some of the ones that I've seen. They're sort of kind of a lightweight tin or some sort of alloy. These look really rugged.
Exactly, yeah, because there's a lot of manufacturers out there that are using, like you said, that the inner gauge is steel or metal or aluminum, whatever it might be. There's even some manufacturers that are using wood for these drawers or other lock boxes out there. But with Tuffy, we are 100% steel. We are making sure that we give you the most durable product possible, and that gauge of steel does vary just depending on the product itself, going from a 16 gauge and some going all the way up to an 11 gauge, just depending on what the purpose for that product is, where it's installing, and the space available. So we definitely make sure that no pry bar or anything else is going to be able to get into these products, because those the steel, not only with the thickness and the durability of it, but there's a lot of design aspects into it as well, with hemming of the edges, our pry guard system. So it is definitely tested, proven, and going to keep people out.
Yeah, it's one thing to have, something that looks solid, but on the other hand, you really want it to be real solid. One of the other ones I really liked that I saw when I was poking around your website is the Jeep rear bench seat underdraw security storage. So it doesn't look like it takes up a lot of room. It slides under and it's only for, some of the older like YJs and TJs, I guess. But still, it looks really neat, because you can maybe you're doing some off-roading and you want to keep keep some stuff locked away in there. It doesn't take up a lot of room, but yet it looks solid and it's lockable, and you can put other stuff in there too.
Exactly. And and that low profile drawer, like you said, it's going to give you just the storage that you need. But then what's also really cool about that one is it keeps that second row seat in that Jeep, because you don't have a lot, like we talked about, there's not a lot of space in Jeeps, and not only trying to keep everything that you need, but then still be able to have passengers in the vehicle. It's a difficult thing to do, and that drawer does both, and it's a really cool design that we're really the only ones in the world that have anything like it.
Yeah. Now, are you, and I haven't gone far enough to look yet, but have you gone to the point where you're helping people with, one of the things that's fairly common these days is things like tailgates get stolen. Do you have any kind of products that help secure stuff like that?
So not at this time. There's definitely some good manufacturers out there that we have some good relationships with, notably Jimmy Jammer. They definitely have some tailgate lock protectors in that space, and they're doing a really bang-up job of that. So we don't currently have like the tailgate lock protector as they do, because they've already got that out there.
Okay.
We've already got a really good relationship with them. But most of our products are really going to be designed towards lock and key with securing items inside of the vehicle.
And, you mentioned good relationships. You also have a installer program now, right?
That is right, yep. Because at the end of the day, some of these products, they are heavy. I mean, it is steel, and there is going to be some weight, and not everybody is willing or able to actually lift some of these products into the mounting location. So we actually have a home installation service available directly from our website, that when you're checking out, you can add on that installation service, and then they will actually follow the tracking number the exact same way you are. Once it delivers, they will then schedule a time to actually come to your home and install the product in your driveway.
Well, that certainly makes things a lot easier for people. Like you said, some of these big boxes are pretty heavy and it's going to require a couple people to, get them up in place. And you want to make sure you do it right. And some of them, a lot of things, and I'm a classic example of this with do-it-yourself projects around the house, is, boy, the next one's going to go a lot better. But a lot of times there's never a next one. So having the idea that somebody is installed one of these systems before can make life a lot easier. So because then they've done it, they know the little tricks and tips, and they know maybe they have to move this or do that, and know where the install is, and blindly drilling holes and stuff, if you're not sure what you're doing, can be a little bit nerve-wracking.
Exactly, and to that point as well, they are Tuffy certified installers. They do go through a training. We actually touch base with them on a quarterly basis. We give them fresh training material, and we go through those steps to make sure that when they show up, they know exactly what they need to do.
Yeah, and looking at the vehicles that you have stuff for, Chevy and GMC, and Ram and Ford and Jeep, obviously, Toyota, very popular pickup trucks. You cover a lot of their line as well, right?
Mm-hmm. That is correct. Yep, we definitely look at all vehicles and definitely see what all those options are available. Do we have it for every single vehicle on the road? No, because it is difficult to keep up with all the changes year over year. But we definitely strive to get as many options out there as possible.
Yeah, I was looking at one, and it's become kind of a collector's item now. The FJ Cruiser, which when it came out was kind of an oddball vehicle. People loved it or hated it, but now it's become kind of a collector's item. But you guys actually have a center console security safe that looks like it fits right in, and looks like it almost came from the factory that way.
Exactly, and that is probably one of the easiest installs for any console that we'll ever have, too, because it simply bolts down into that existing space, and when you look at it, you almost kind of say, wow, that should have been there from the factory. So it's amazing how much of a following is behind that vehicle, because even after all of these years, we still have a lot of demand for those FJ Cruiser consoles, as well as those cargo drawers that we have in the rear as well. They just do not disappear.
And you guys also kind of thought it through enough, and you look at space that maybe people don't think of. You guys have overhead consoles for a lot of vehicles too, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We have overhead consoles, like on the Jeeps and Scouts and others that can actually install above the windshield and to the roll bar and giving you some storage up high. But then also, for another example of kind of some of the hidden discrete areas, like on the newer Ram trucks, in the crew cabs in the rear of the vehicle, they have what is called the Ram bin in the floor. And we even create locking storage for those Ram bins in the floor that a lot of owners don't even know that they have that in the vehicle.
That's, it's kind of funny you said that. I had a small SUV, and I think I owned it for months. And one day I was vacuuming it, and I'm like, oh, look, there's a slide-out drawer under the passenger seat. I'm like, and it wasn't particularly useful, other than you could certainly have put some sort of a locking box under there, made it easy to slide it out and be able to get to it. But it's kind of funny, unless somebody shows it to you. And it was one of those things that was barely even mentioned in the owner's manual, which I thought was kind of funny. But you're right. There are. How did you put it? Your creativity is only limited by your imagination, or something like that. What did you say?
Exactly. Yeah. And when we look at vehicles, we are eyes wide open, and we are tearing them apart to find all of those spaces and nooks and crannies that are available to us. So we definitely challenge our engineers to use their imagination. So sometimes that's probably a little bit more difficult than it needs to be, but we definitely help coax them along.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that there are some. I mean, locking boxes are one thing, which are perfectly legal to have in your car, just like a locking glove compartment. But in some areas, I guess, having really truly hidden storage can violate some state laws, right?
Well, it just all depends on those state laws, and most of the time it really just comes down to not only the contents inside, but how those contents are secured inside of the product itself. So we actually see a lot of law enforcement and government agents using our products because our products are compliant for any of the laws that are out there. But ultimately, it comes down to the contents inside of the product itself, because there are some states where, for example, let's talk about a firearm, because that's usually the most prominent, where there's a lot of laws around it. And a lot of states, the magazine and ammunition must be stored and secured separate from the firearm itself. So that's when it would become illegal, is if you have both firearm and magazine with the ammunition stored in the same product or the same safe. That's where the illegal part comes in, and that's all mandated by state law itself. But simply by removing that magazine and ammunition and securing it in another location in the vehicle, then you're legal and compliant.
There you go. Speaking of law enforcement, do you have products specific for law enforcement?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely do, and they definitely have a different set of needs and wants and desires with it, and then just some other things that are entailed with that. But not only are they using the existing products that you see on the website right now, they also have some custom products that they do as well. We've done some really cool custom setups for like even drones, and where they actually have multi-$1,000 drone setups that they need to be able to transport with them at any time. And we will do applications where they not only can secure the drone, but all the features and everything that they need to operate that drone. So everything you see on the website they're using, but then there's also things that we go above and beyond on.
Yeah. One of the things that I've seen in the past is, sometimes I'll see things like, a really good-looking, lock box of some sort, and what comes down to a pretty crappy lock afterwards. But you guys put as much emphasis in the lock as you do in the box, right?
Absolutely, and first and foremost, our lock, it is proprietary. This isn't something that's just off the shelf. It is something that we have designed, spec, and make sure that we are the only ones to have access to it. And so there's a lot that goes into the engineering and the design of the lock, but then also our PryGuard system. And what that simply is it's a lock and latch system that ensures that when somebody tries to pry into it, it's going to grab and hold. The quickest and most easiest way to actually defeat a product is to try and pull the cam arm out from the latch brackets. So our design helps prevent that, because if you go and you look at a lot of the, I'm going to call them kind of knockoffs on Amazon or anything like that, start paying attention to the lock and start paying attention to the cam arm, and you're going to notice those cam arms are rounded. And when you see that, there's nothing that actually prevents that from being released from the latch bracket. So there's a lot of thought and time put into the design to make sure that nobody can actually pull those cam arms out from the latch brackets themselves.
Yeah, I guess if you want to get truly paranoid, go on YouTube and watch the lock-picking lawyer, and you'll think that there's never anything that's ever going to be safe, So, but the idea that you put this you put this system in place, whatever it is, whether it's a portable lockbox with a cable lock, whether it's something that's mounted to the vehicle, the idea is it factors in that delay of someone that maybe they were going to try to steal something out of your car, whether it's whether you run your whole life on a tablet and you want to make sure it's locked away because it has everything, your whole life is involved in it, and it's going to add to the time of somebody trying to get to it, and maybe they're just going to look and they're going to go, you know what, this is more work than it's worth, and I'm likely to get caught doing bad things. So it's those kind of things that I think really, really help a lot.
Exactly, and you know what? I'm going to share an example of that, and this is about 4 years ago, but a gentleman parked at Miami International Airport. He was only parked there for 4 or 5 days, but he had a Jeep Wrangler, and he had one of our glove boxes installed, and he left, all was normal. He came back, vehicle was broken into, they took everything they can get their hands on, but then they were trying to get into the glove box, and there's no idea how long they had to work on this Jeep because it was in the airport parking lot. Obviously, nobody's watching it. Maybe there were some cameras, but he's gone. So they weren't in a rush to get out of there, so they had time on their hand to be able to try and get into this. Ultimately, what ended up happening is they pried and pried and pried. They caved in the dash, but the glove box did not release. They could not get into it, and they walked away. So it's a great example of what these products can do.
Yeah, it really is. And if people want more information on the products, they want more information about security in general and what vehicles match what, and even you even have this community page where you can share some other ideas. Pretty simple. It's just tuffyproducts.com, right?
That is correct. Yep, that's our website. You go take a look on that, and again, that is TUFFY. So tuffyproducts.com.
Sounds great. Hey, I want to thank you for taking a little time out of your Sunday morning and joining us on the Car Doctor program.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, take care. Bye-bye now. Have a good rest of your Sunday. We need to take a break, pay some bills. My name's John Paul. This is the Car Doctor program. You're listening on 95.9 WATD. If you would like to join us, give us a call at 781-837-4900, and we'll talk to you about, maybe you saw me on TV and you want to laugh about it. You can do that too. 781-837-4900. We'll be right back.
AAA is with you at every moment in your life. They have 24-hour-7 roadside assistance, which covers you in any car you're driving or riding in, even a rental or your friend's wheels. They have great member rates on home and auto insurance, savings on travel, hotels, and rental cars, and discounts on hundreds of your favorite brands. You're covered on and off the road. Learn more at aaa.com/join.
Make an appointment Sunday morning at 11 for John Paul, the Car Doctor, on 95.9 WATD. Now, back to the Car Doctor.
And welcome back to the Car Doctor program on 95.9 WATD. Our phone number 781-837-4900. 781-837-4900 is how you get through and talk to us about your car and car problems. Well, kind of weird things happened to me this week, I guess. It's no secret that, for the last, 6-7 months, I guess, I've been living in Florida in my little tin shack in Florida that got beat up by the hurricane. It's pretty much 99% back together. My wife and I are having a little disagreement on the ceiling of part of the living room where she wants to paint it white. I actually did kind of naughty pine shiplap or tongue and groove board, so I kind of want to do whitewash. She wants to do regular white. Other people have suggested just polyurethane it with a satin-based polyurethane. Might make it look nice and bright. We haven't decided yet, so that will be a discussion for next season when we come back, hopefully. Hurricane season spares us this year. People said this storm was one in 100 years. I hope so. I hope the next 1 in 100 year one doesn't start this year, and they'll go, oh, now you're good for another 100 years. But it was time to put some things away, and we keep our 2015 Volkswagen Beetle down here, and it's a convertible, and it's been down here for 3 years, I think. This year it suffered a little bit because there was about 8 inches of water just on the ground around here. The street had anywhere from, once the drains couldn't drain anymore, it had anywhere from, 4 to 8 inches of water, depending where it was. So I don't know how much water there was kind of under the car. So I took it to a local AAA-approved auto repair shop and wanted to have an oil change done. And one of the reasons I went there was The Volkswagen has this big belly pan. It's held in place with triple square bolts, which I don't have a triple square driver here. And besides, it's low to the ground, and I'd have to go get ramps and a lot more work. So took it to the local AAA approved auto repair shop around the corner from here, and I asked if I could wait, and they said sure, And while they were looking at it, I asked that I could, get under it and look and just see how it's doing, because I haven't really been under it. I wanted to see if any rust issues, corrosion on wiring, boots that are bad, anything. And everything looked pretty good, and not a lot of surface rust. And in fact, even the technician who was doing the oil change said to me, it looks pretty good for a car that spent, 5 years up, in Massachusetts. And I said, yeah, it's doing pretty good. And part of it was, about, I guess, just before we brought it down here, I've talked about that undercoating stuff called wax oil. And I didn't do a ton of it, but I had it up on a lift. I borrowed a lift from somebody, and I had it up on a lift, and I undercoated as much steel as I could. And it really looks pretty good under there. I was surprised. The wax oil's holding up really well. You can tell the areas that I missed because they are a little bit rusty. But other than that, everything looks pretty good. But while I was in there, they did a safety inspection. So they looked at the brakes and tires and belts and hoses and all that stuff. And I said to him, do you charge extra to check the battery? And he says, no, I checked the battery while it was here. We have we used our battery tester, and he said, your battery should be like 550 cold cranking amps. It's getting a little iffy. It's down around 400. Probably something you're going to have to think about, at some point in the near future. And I said, yeah, it probably is. Literally the next day I went to start the car, and the battery was almost dead. It wasn't completely dead, but it was almost dead. And I was sort of like, Now, there's a second issue, too, and one of them is that the ignition switch in this car is going to need to be replaced at some point, because when you take the key out of the ignition, and this is an ignition switch that historically has had a problem because Volkswagen has warrantied it for 10 years now, that the ignition can be either hard to turn, or you can't get the key out, or you can't get it to shut off, or whatever the case is. But also the key in ignition warning, where you put the key in and take the key out, sometimes it thinks the key is still in the ignition. So did I take the key out, close the door, and did the little beep, beep, beep thing still keep beeping? Maybe. I don't think so. I think it's just a case of this battery. It's a 2015 car. And people who've listened to me for a long time know that the average life of a battery is in the Northeast is somewhere between 3 and 5 years. And the average life of a battery in hot weather states is closer to 2 or 3 years. And even the guy over at the AAA shop I went to, he's like, wow, this is the original battery. You've done pretty good. He said, how long has the car been in Florida? And I'm like, I think 3 years. And he goes, we barely get 3 years out of a battery here in Florida because of the heat. So heat is the enemy of car batteries, and some of it I attribute to the fact that Volkswagen put this sort of blanket around the battery. And the other thing is that when the car sits, I leave it on a battery tender. So there's a variety of different kinds. The one I have down here is battery tender. It's a brand that's been around for a long while, and a lot of people use them. And I like the battery tender Junior, which is the one I use on this car, because it literally fits under one of those see-through in-use covers that you have on outside outlets. So I can just put it under there, close the in-use cover. It's got enough holes in it where it ventilates it, but and then it has a long cable, so I just plug it into the car and it's good to go. So it keeps the battery charged up. So I think that has helped with the longevity of the battery. So then, I had 2 choices, or 3 choices, or 4 choices. Well, I could replace the battery now. I could replace the battery when I come back. So, that was one of my things I had to think about. And I'm like, you know what? Even though I just advised someone who had a very similar thing. They keep a car parked somewhere, I think it was up in Maine, and they said, the battery is dead. Do I replace the battery now, or do I replace the battery when I come back? And I think in that case, I actually said replace the battery when they come back. But in this case with me, I said, you know what? Rather than have to deal with it when I come back, I think I'll replace it now. And even though I know it's going to sit in Florida heat in the summertime, it's probably going to shorten the battery life somewhat because it's not in a garage, it's in a carport, which blew away in the storm, but I built another one. So it's going to get a little bit of shade at least anyway, and maybe that will help. So I went to my multiple choices. Call AAA, have AAA come out and install a battery. Okay, that's one option. The second option is go to right near me. There's an Advanced Auto Parts store and an O'Reilly's Auto Parts store. Or go to the local Walmart. So where did I go? Local Walmart. Cheaper. Although I did buy the top-of-the-line battery that was there. So again, something I might not always take my own advice on. I replaced it with an AGM battery. What was in there was a conventional lead-acid battery. I replaced it with an AGM battery for two reasons. One, it was the only one they had in stock. Cost a couple bucks more than the conventional lead-acid. Normally, I like to replace lead-acid with lead-acid and AGM with AGM. But interesting that my Hyundai has an AGM battery in it, and I have no idea why. I don't know why they put that in from the factory because it doesn't have start-stop technology, which is usually the case with AGM batteries. So I put the battery in, and I have never replaced a battery in a Volkswagen, in a late model Volkswagen before. So I put the battery in, started up, every light on the dash is on. I'm like, well, this isn't good. And my concern was, and what I wasn't able to do, was I wasn't able to keep the memory of the battery of the car. And normally what I tell people to do is, and for a lot of reasons, so you don't have to reset the radio and the clock and memory functions with people with fancier cars with memory seats and all that sort of stuff. You use a memory saver of some sort. Back in the olden days, it was a 12-volt it was a 9-volt battery that plugged into the cigarette lighter. And back then, cigarette lighters were powered up all the time. You plug it in. As long as you didn't open and close any doors, it would hold the memory of the vehicle so you didn't lose things like computer codes if you disconnected the battery, things like that. Since then, they've come up with different methods to do this. One of them plugged into the ALDL connector, the under-dash connector. Some of those work, some of them don't. At AAA, what we tell our battery technicians to do, take your jump start unit and hook it up to the battery cable. So hook it up to the positive cable. Find a good negative, usually the negative jump start post, connect it up to that. Wrap that cable in a way that it's not going to short to anything. Take it off. Now all of a sudden the jump start box is powering up the car so you don't lose any memory. Well, I didn't have the ability to do that. I didn't have jumper cables. I do have lithium-ion jump start boxes, and they work pretty good, but not all of them have a procedure to turn them on so they're on all the time. So my big concern was the radio, and I know in late model Volkswagens, the radio memory is preset from the factory, so the only way the radio would fail to work is if I took the radio out of this car and put it in another Volkswagen, it would come up that the radio needed to be recoded. On later model Volkswagens, I think starting even way back in 2009, if you disconnect the battery, the radio station, stay put, no memory problems, nothing like that. But in the older Volkswagens, and a lot of older German cars, you disconnected the battery, it's going to ask you for a radio code. You had to make sure you saved that little card that came with the car, and you used the preset buttons to put the code back in. So I put it, so I wasn't too concerned. Started up the car, traction control light was on, steering control light was on, tire pressure monitor light was on. Might have been a fourth one that was on. So I'm like, So I jumped to conclusions. I took my scan tool out, and do I have a scan tool here in Florida? Yes, I do. Took my scan tool out, plugged it in, didn't really find a whole lot. So I'm like, shut it off, start it back up, light's still on. Then I recalled my own advice. Drive the car for about 3 minutes. Start it up, put it in gear, literally drove 100 yards. All the lights went out. Everything's been fine since. The only one thing I had to redo was I had to reset the auto up and down for the windows because that kind of goes away, and that's simple enough. Push the button down, hold it, push it up, hold it, and they automatically reset. So simple and easy to do. So that was one of the interesting little challenges that I had before putting things away. The other one was last year I bought a little small boat, nothing fancy at all. But last year I changed the oil on the motor because although it doesn't require an oil change for 100 hours, the dealer recommended oil changes at 30 hours. Mercury, which is the engine, recommends at 100. I had about 50 hours on it last year because I got it late in the season, and I changed the oil. But I did not change the lower unit oil, which is where the gear case is for the propeller. And this year I decided, even though with the storm and repairs, renovations we did, and plus there was a big red tide issue down here, and there was some pretty windy spells, I don't think I put another 30 hours on the engine while it was here. But I decided, because I like to put things away with fresh oil, I decided I would change the oil in the engine, and it was now where there's 50 plus 30, 35, 85 hours on the lower unit oil, I decided it's probably a good time to change it. So a weird procedure. It's like changing transmission fluid in a Toyota. It has a drain plug and a fill plug, but you drain it through the bottom drain and fill it through the bottom drain. So you take the plug out of the bottom, take the vent plug. It has two different vents on the top. You take the plugs out of the top, the vent plug and the other one out. You drain the oil, and then you use a little pump, and you pump in, very similar to how you fill a Toyota transmission. You pump it in through the bottom till it comes out through the top, which to me sounds like the dumbest idea ever. But so you go and you buy a quart of special gear oil, which is probably just gear oil, and you buy this little $10 pump that screws into the bottom. You pump it until the oil comes out the top. So you pump it, it comes out the vent, you put that in, pump it a little bit more, comes out the other hole, and then you hastily try to take the pump line off and put the little cap back in. So I did that. So fresh oil, fresh gear case oil, so it's good. It's good to go for next season. But why I brought this up was I got an email this morning. Somebody had a problem with they said, I have two very different problems I hope you can help me with. One was they have a problem where when they start their car, the four-way emergency flashers keep flashing, they hear clicking, and the way they remedy that, and the car has a remote start in it, the way they remedy that is they turn their headlights on and then start the car with the emergency flashers shut off. And they're like, what do you think's wrong? And I said, probably a bad ground for the relay for the emergency for the aftermarket remote starter. When you hit the remote start button, it usually in a lot of cars either flashes the four-way flashers until you get out and turn the key and start the car, or at least it does it once. In a lot of cases, some of these remote start systems will flash the four-way flashers continually, so you know the car's running. Kind of makes a little bit of sense. The second question was they have an outboard motor. They're changing the lower gear case oil. I'm like, well, I just did that. And the problem is they couldn't get the lower drain plug out because they tried sticking a screwdriver in there, twisting. All they did was make a mess out of it. They took some propane torch, actually MAP gas, which you can't get regular MAP gas anymore. It used to be MAP gas was sort of a acetylene gas product, I guess. I don't remember what MAP actually stands for. Now they call it Pro MAP or MAP Pro or something, which is a combination of the original MAP gas and propane. So it doesn't heat as hot as it used to. It used to be you could actually braise with it. You can't anymore. But they said they were heating it with MAP gas and still couldn't get the drain plug out. What did they do? The season is upon them. So anybody who's ever worked on a motorcycle before and has anything to do with aluminum, the best tool in the world is an impact driver, but you don't get crazy. An impact driver is a thing that's about 6 inches long, has a variety of different screwdriver blades or a 3/8 drive socket adapter, and you find the right size screwdriver blade that's going to fit snugly in the screw slot, and tap it with a hammer. You don't get crazy. You don't go smashing into it, but you tap it with a hammer, hold on to it, and between the impact blows and the idea that you're driving the tip deeper into the screwdriver slot, you should be able to do it. You know, if you don't have that, I recommend you go buy one for $20. They're pretty inexpensive, unless you go buy the Snap-on one, which is, I think I have two. I think I have the Snap-on one, which I think was probably $50 or $60. And then I have like the, I don't know, one I bought from some cheap tool company. Do they work the same? Probably. The Snap-on one just looks nicer. But go buy one for $20. You'll probably use it again for something. And that should do it. If you don't have one, maybe you can take a punch, catch maybe the corner of the screwdriver slot, and gently, again, I use the word gently, tap on the plug, and maybe you can get it to turn. It's about the best you can do. Well, we were talking, somebody emailed me and said they have a problem with the 2010 Honda Accord. And they said it's fouling over the time that their daughter has had this car. It's fouled spark plugs 4 times. Is this a known issue with the vehicle? Back in 2010, maybe as late as 2012, some Honda Accords did foul spark plugs. And the fix was first a software fix that generally didn't work. What it usually was a bad set of rings. Now this is 12, 13 years later. Could it still be the problem with rings? Sure it could. But 13 years later, it probably makes no sense to do an engine overhaul. Honda's not going to do anything about it. Maybe just the thing is, maybe look for a hotter spark plug that may solve the problem. That may do a little bit better with a higher heat range, and that may remedy the issue and be able to get the plugs to last a little bit longer and hopefully not foul the plugs. So you could certainly try that and see what happens and see if that does the job. Somebody else wrote to me just yesterday. They have a Hyundai Sonata, or 2018 Hyundai Sonata, and they said that the car wouldn't start. And they kind of had a weird email the way they asked it. The email, I want to try to find it because I answered it this morning. The person said, 7 months of major Hyundai car problems in my driveway. If they said they have, they say, I think they found the problem before, however, I need an expert's opinion before I actually take the car somewhere and look like a fuel or get overcharged because something is small and ridiculous. Car was fine, driving with no issues until one day on the way home from work, less than 3 miles from home, about 3 to 5 minutes away, the interior lights on the dashboard and stereo went a bit dimmer. We got home, car wouldn't start, but the lights still go on, and so it's not the battery or alternator. It probably is the battery or alternator. Hate to say it, probably the alternator. My non-expert opinion is the key fob battery finally died and needs to be changed because approximately 2 weeks prior to this, both keys were showing low battery, which is kind of interesting because I don't know about you, but I have 2 key fobs for my car. One's on my wife's key ring, one's on my key ring. I typically drive my car more than she drives my car, so it's odd that both keys would have dead key fob batteries. Just sort of odd. So she also said there's nothing else other than the check engine light. We had checked. The code was something to do with the vehicle's intake, which actually happened to be one of the many recalls of the 2018 white Hyundai Sonata. I specifically said white because 2017 and 18 have a paint defect that apparently has not been given a recall yet. They don't actually have a recall cars for bad paint. So in your expert opinion, with no other issues, do you agree with the battery and the key fob possibly being the problem? Please contact back at earliest convenience. Probably not the key fob. You can throw the key fob away and drive the car, and the lights aren't going to come on once the car is started. So not that. Probably a bad alternator. Could be a bad battery. Could be a combination of both. After all, it's got a little bit of age on it. Be surprised, but it's certainly possible. Certainly, if both fobs are showing low battery, go replace it. I think they're CR2023 or CR3023, something like that. Because a couple of weeks ago, I was driving a Genesis, the premium brand of Hyundai, and the key fob battery actually was dead, and I had a push button start. So with most cars with push button start, if the key fob battery is dead, you hold the key fob up against the button. There's usually just enough kind of signal strength left in the key fob where it will start the car. Oddly, in my little box of batteries, I had one of these little wafer batteries because they fit in a variety of different things, and I popped it in the remote. The remote worked perfectly afterwards. Simple. Took 3 minutes to take the key fob apart, put the new battery in, and fix it. So both of them are showing up low battery. Put a new one in. I think the last two batteries I bought came in a little kit for a little package. Two of them for like $3 at Walmart, so go replace them. But I really think you have a bad alternator or battery or both at this point. So call AAA. If you're a AAA member, have them come out, test the battery, test the alternator, and I think you'll find that you probably have an alternator problem too. But at least you'll get the battery tested and see where it is. We need to take another break, I think, don't we, Jesse?
We do.
We do. Why don't we do that? My name is John Paul. This is the Car Doctor program. You're listening on 95.9 WATD, the South Shores radio station. We'll be right back.
AAA is with you at every moment in your life. They have 24-hour 7 roadside assistance, which covers you in any car you're driving or riding in, even a rental or your friend's wheels. They have great member rates on home and auto insurance, savings on travel, hotels, and rental cars, and discounts on hundreds of your favorite brands. You're covered on and off the road. Learn more at AAA.com/join.
And welcome back to the Car Doctor program, and you're listening on 95.9 WATD. And I was, it was kind of funny. I was looking at my answer to the woman that had the key fob things, and decided I actually didn't give her quite enough answer. As I talked it through, I think she needs to really test out that alternator as well and see what's going on with that. So, and again, sometimes, the best testing tools we use one at AAA. It's really good. But there's some other ones. Don't rely strictly on a battery voltmeter. That is the one tool I guess I don't, it's like, what tools do I have in which place? I do have a battery tester at the cottage. Not sure why exactly, but I have one there. And I gave one, it kind of, I guess, kills me a little bit. I gave two away. I gave both of them away to South Shore Votech. I had one that was made by Midtronics that hooked up to a scanner that worked really well. And I said, "What am I ever going to use this for?" And I gave it away. Probably should have kept it and brought it here. And the other one was an old-time resistance-style one, which we kind of jokingly referred to as a toaster, because it had this coil that would get really hot and glow red, but it would test the battery, so you know how it is. Voltmeter will give you an idea what battery voltage is. Won't give you that great an idea. A fully charged battery is somewhere like 12.6 volts. One that's only 12 volts could have like a 60% charge rate. So it'll give you a little bit of a hint about what's going on. It was kind of funny. I tested the battery voltage because that's the only tool I had here, voltmeter, and in the Volkswagen. And although the battery did barely start the car, it did start it. And I checked it when I got home, and I looked at the battery, and it's like 10.6 volts. And I'm like, oof, that battery's just all worn out. So time to replace it. One more question before we get going here. Somebody wrote to me a kind of a let's see. They said they went to a car dealership. How they put it? I have a 2018 Honda CR-V. I brought it to the Honda dealership in Rochester, New York, to be serviced, which included transmission fluid replacement and oil change. Don't know why you would do a transmission fluid replacement that early. Can't hurt, but I don't think it's necessary. After the car was serviced, I drove it to Rhode Island and noticed something was leaking on my driveway. Went to the local dealership. New York dealership paid, and they found the drain plug was loose and leaking transmission fluid. They test drove the car to verify the transmission health. After they replaced the transmission fluid, I don't know how much fluid leaked out after driving for 10 hours. Wow, that's a long drive. My concern is the transmission may have been damaged by not having enough fluid in it. Is that possible? Well, it certainly is possible, but chances are if the drain plug was just loose, it was dripping, is it dripping a drop or two every minute? Maybe it's down a quart, maybe it's down, it would have been nice if they measured how much fluid came out of it, which no one ever does. But just to make sure, certainly low fluid can cause the transmission overheat and certainly shorten its life, but typically you'll notice if the fluid is low, it's not going to shift right. And you may even get a check engine light if the transmission fluid gets hot enough. So at this point, I think don't be too concerned about it. The good news is you have full documentation. So if, a year from now, 2 years from now, the transmission fails, well, it failed because you guys screwed it up. So there you go. Hey, we need to go. That music means we are out of time. I am taking the long drive home this week, so I will be back in Massachusetts next week. But until then, make sure you wear your seatbelt, drive safely, be good to your car, and if you see an emergency vehicle by the side of the road, slow down or move over. It saves lives. Talk to you all next week. Bye-bye.